some business deals impact the world more than others. When guns symbolize freedom and national pride for millions of people,
America! Yeah!
the chance to profit of that was just too tempting to ignore. And how to best profit if not by starting with those way too young to know what to believe?
Sig. But just look at that color of brown. I love that brick. I love it. Freedom! That brick. I love it.
And where better to find those young, shapeable minds than in video games?
Tonight it's launch fever here in the British capital. Launch fever for this game, Modern Warfare 2.
I just think it's very, very addictive. The whole thing of running around with a gun and being shot at, in this virtual world is just enthralling,
But behind closed doors, two industries you'd never imagine together struck a deal. The kind of deal you wouldn't want anyone to know. Because if exposed, it would have consequences far beyond the virtual world. But when secret deals between games and guns start shaping people's perception about violence, as a society, where do we draw the line? This is an insane story. A secret deal, ruthless marketing, and that one tragic event that exposed it all and changed gaming literally forever. But it's also a story that's deeply rooted in America, the place with more guns than people. And if you tell an industry, there's a chance for them to push their products through one of the biggest games ever. It is the weapons industry. And in 2009, Modern Warfare 2 was that game. Within 24 hours of release, the game sold 5 million copies. It was a masterstroke between realism and cinematic storytelling. The game's publisher, Activision, spared no expense for the launch. Red carpet, nice ladies, celebrities. It was a multi-million-dollar cultural moment. But behind the scenes was a secret licensing deal with America's oldest gunmaker, Remington. The deal? Feature Remington's ACR rifle, one of the first real-life brands shown directly on a gun in Call of Duty. Highly accurate, precise, low recoil, it was replicated down to the smallest detail. The goal? Make the game feel more real, of course. But on its own, that wasn't yet anything unusual. Because from guns, cars, sneakers to celebrities, games license anything that's trademarked just for that extra realism. Especially in shooter games, realism isn't just a feature, it's a selling point. And that's why you'll sometimes spot gun makers in the end credits, or you find entire YouTube channels comparing game guns with real-life models.
America! Yeah!
Some games avoid licensing deals altogether by purely creating fictional brands. But Remington's deal, there wasn't just any licensing deal. It marked the first real turning point in how gun makers approached underage audiences. With half of Call of Duty players under 18, Remington's deal was the first known case that took licensing into a darker direction, using a popular game as a gateway to potential future buyers. Way too young to drink, drive, or buy guns. But hey, that's how marketing works. If you want to shape people's perception about something, you gotta start them young. And for Remington, young meant very, very young. And so, Remington devised a marketing strategy so deceptive it wasn't even meant to be publicly revealed, until that one tragic event that exposed Remington's so-called gaming strategy. But before I'll show you their gaming strategy, we all have to first understand gun marketing as a whole. So, let's go a little bit further back in the past.
Kitchen gun!
Because before gun makers started targeting toddlers, sexy ladies, and emasculated men, gun makers had only one target: strong, white men, sportsmen, hunters, those that don't eat tofu but only their own meat. 100 years ago, owning hunting rifles was your John Wayne badge of honor. It showed you could protect your family and your nation. But above all, it was about the bond between a father and his son on those holiday hunting trips and Christmas mornings, because Christmas lasts a lifetime when it's so Remington. And if you as a young lad managed to talk your dad into buying you that Remington, you should also talk him into getting his very own Remington. Oh, and if you were worried about safety, don't worry. Even the little ones could handle it, because Papa says it won't hurt us. Of course, all of this is rooted in the Second Amendment, a constitutional right which to this day grants Americans the right to keep and bear arms. And under this right, American TV was soon flooded with the golden era of all American heroes, symbols of national pride.
The Rifleman.
But as the 90s kicked in, the tone shifted. With crime rates climbing, ads switched from hunting trips to dark parking lots, of course, with frightened women clutching handguns. Fear, not happy Christmas mornings, was the new selling point. And boy, did it work. A whopping 45% jump in household guns in just a few decades. A gunmaker's dream, which would soon turn into a nightmare. Because its strong white men market was dying out. Hunting became less popular as people moved to cities, nor was the father-son bond enough to sell guns. As the market was shrinking, none of the old marketing messages seemed to stick anymore. So, as one door closed, another door opened, and it was violent video games. Iconic games like Doom and Wolfenstein kicked off the FPS genre, and soon, many more iconic games would follow, including Call of Duty. And here is where Remington's gaming strategy kicked in. Look, they just wanted players to walk into shooting ranges and say things like, "Oh, I held one of those guns before in Battlefield." I know it sounds simplistic, but it works. It worked on me. Because as soon as I started playing Call of Duty, I couldn't wait but to hold one of those sleek beasts in my very own hands. Yep, that's me right there. Totally different experience from the game, I know, but that's how it starts, and that's how marketing works, and that's exactly what Remington was after. And so, leaked emails and memos from the early 2000s show Remington's big mission: create America's first firearms empire. Now, to become America's biggest firearms empire, they first had to solve a problem: increasing urbanization. With more people moving to cities, shooting and hunting areas were in decline. Their solution? A new target. Besides traditional tom and deer campers, they added females, millennials, and youth. Tom and deer campers are terms for traditional gun buyers, but their new target clearly included children. So, to get their strategy rolling, Remington reached out to Activision and said, "Yo, we want some brand exposure on one of our best products," and it was the ACR rifle. But that's not all. Remington explicitly told Activision not to use their guns where gamers could play non-military bad guys. It had to be the good guys. Which made Modern Warfare 2 actually an odd choice, since it's the game with the infamous No Russian mission, where you're part of a terrorist attack at an airport massacring civilians. Exactly the kind of scenario Remington wanted to avoid. But according to the leaked documents or their gaming strategy, Remington was actually fine if replicas were used, because they'd be recognizable by gamers anyways and still receive benefit from inclusion in the game. Pretty ironic, I know, but Remington didn't really care. In fact, they were pretty stoked about how gamers love the gun because of its low recoil and how amazing it is that a game can sell a real-world product attribute. But their gaming strategy was just the beginning. Remington, alongside their network of brands, wasn't just out hunting gamers in video games. They flooded every social media channel with ads so ruthless, they would soon become Remington's downfall. "Consider your man card reissued," reads this ad, promising you to restore your lost masculinity. And because Colin F is just unmanly and avoids eye contact with fifth graders, the only way to reclaim his masculinity is through a semi-automatic rifle. And do you think tofu is an acceptable meat substitute? Yes? No? Of course no, because real men don't eat tofu. But if that didn't convince you yet, how about an ad that confidently claims that with over 5 million sold, the world's largest army ain't in China, because America's gun-owning civilians are the real army. Sure. And so it continues. From one rifle, many missions, control your destiny, or killing zombies before it was cool, the message is always the same. Real power and real masculinity come from holding a Remington rifle. But masculinity, or the lack of it, was just one avenue. Sex was a way more powerful weapon. No pun intended. But look at this. A whole new world of gunfluencers, or so-called gun bunnies, was called into existence. All very sexy ladies with their assets front and center. Because, you know, real girls don't want flowers for Valentine's Day, they want guns. Lots of guns. Sorry, I had to say that. Anyways, if you think gun ads stopped at emasculated men that shouldn't eat tofu or sexy gun bunnies, you were wrong.
So what we have here is a scaled down 22 long rifle that looks and feels and operates just like mom or dad's gun. So it's lighter, it weighs in at only 2.2 pounds.
Yes, these are real rifles, by the way, for girls and boys, just smaller and less powerful. But still, real firearms that shoot real bullets. So with adorable My First Rifle ads that come in all sorts of colors, no kid is left behind, especially not the ladies, who get their fair share of pink gun glory. Oh, and here come the dad ads again, this time not for hunting trips or happy Christmas mornings, but to make dad jealous. And so from TikTok, Insta to Facebook to trade shows and catalogs, not so kid-friendly ads with firearms are everywhere. But there's one thing these ads never mention. Firearms had long surpassed car accidents as the leading cause of death among children in the States. Since 2015, there's a website that tracks unintentional shootings by kids, with numbers that just don't seem to go down. So when you see ads depicting kids with guns alongside Bible verses that encourage to train them young, you know why those numbers never go down. But some numbers did go up. Sales. With all that aggressive marketing around games and gunfluencers, sales boomed and gunmakers were very happy. But all that success was just a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And explode it did. In December 2012, 20 years old Adam Lanza walked into Sandy Hook Elementary with his mother's rifle. 5 minutes and 154 rounds later, he killed 26 people. 20 of them first graders, as young as 6. Adam used taped mags to reload faster, just like it's done in a violent video game called Call of Duty. Raised by gun-loving parents, Adam had a special bond to his mother, who he shot dead before the school shooting. Besides his mom and 20 kids, the last person he killed was himself. It was a wake-up call, not just for shattered families, but for the entire nation. And for Remington, whose rifle Adam used in the school shooting. And so families tried to sue Remington. But a US law shields gunmakers from lawsuits when their products are used in crimes. So any direct form of legal retaliation was nearly impossible. But there's always a legal loophole if you look hard enough. And in Connecticut, where the shooting happened, there was a big loophole. Deceptive marketing, a law that prohibits any business from engaging in false advertising. And so the victim's lawyers did some digging and covered Remington's secret gaming strategy, which laid out pretty much everything that the court needed to see. The verdict? Guilty of charge. Remington ended up paying $73 million. Case closed. A landmark win. But what was a win for some became a PR nightmare for the gaming industry. Suddenly, violent video games became the nation's scapegoat. In the press, among politicians, and of course, the NRA, America's biggest gun rights advocate.
There exists in this country, sadly, a callous, corrupt, and corrupting shadow industry that sells and stows violence against its own people through vicious, violent video games.
Doesn't the NRA know who's funding all this? Well, I'm sure they do, and they must know that behind all this is none other but Cerberus Capital, the private equity giant that owns pretty much every major gun brand out there. After the mass shooting, Cerberus officially considered selling their gun companies. But unofficially, they knew they weren't gonna sell anything. Why? Just look at this. School shooting, sales spike, sales decline. School shooting, sales spike, sales decline, rinse and repeat. Of course, nobody is gonna sell anything there. But instead of blaming private equity firms, we blame violent video games. Though, funny enough, Adam spent more time on Dance Dance Revolution than in Call of Duty. Yep, that's him right there. But that didn't stop politicians from meeting up with game studios to discuss attacks on violent video games.
Violent video game.
Violent video game.
Violent video game.
Luckily, in the end, even a Mr. Biden had to admit that games aren't the problem.
But it's not, in and of itself, the reason why we have this carnage on our streets.
And what about other game studios? How did they react? Well, Activision, of course, cut all ties with Remington. And EA, for instance, they too had to act. After backlash over Medal of Honor, which linked players to real-life weapons on its website, EA took down the website, cut ties with gunmakers altogether, and even removed a video with Magpul, EA's tactical partner. But the irony, instead of also ditching branded guns, EA kept them without paying for licensing deals. Because according to EA, a book doesn't pay for saying the word Colt either. And there you have it. Guns are just part of the game. Whether it's 1 billion, 1 million, or one gun, it doesn't change the core issue. Because the core issue is not gun makers profiting off of gaming deals. The issue is the gun culture around them. A culture shaped not by violent video games, but by old white men that don't have to deal with the consequences.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
See, that's what I mean. That's pretty much summing up the gun culture right there, doesn't it? As if guns are the only answer. But violent video games are surely not the problem. And I'll let Bill Murray have the final word on this.
It's a film. Why don't the government talk about other things in Parliament and save our country and get our country together, as opposed to worrying about damn games?